That was Arden. Oh, this is. I don't know what it's nice. It's so big.
What's your stuff? It's all good.
But that way we have it on tape, so in case we could send it.
Every once in a while.
Bernie, give me a fork, will you?
Say that the jacket, the down of this.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you to Nati for arranging this commemoration of the Yartzeit of Harav Kook, 90 years. Many of you saw the Hamizrahi magazine a few months ago. The whole magazine was dedicated to the Yartzeit of Rav Kook. Rav Kook died in 1935. He was appointed chief rabbi of Jaffa in 1902. He was known as the Yaffa Rav. Remember, there was no Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was established in 1908.
It was Yaffo.
It was Yaffa. He was the Yaffa Rav.
Yaffo Moshavot.
Moshavot, which we'll discuss tonight. And Tel Aviv, Susie, we were on that walking tour when the first few people from Yaffa went out into the sand dunes near Tel Aviv. You can walk that. You can have tours of all the original buildings and where it was, et cetera, when Tel Aviv was first founded. And the British appointed him the chief rabbi in 1919, and he passed away in 1935. So this is 90 years since the death of Rav Kook. So this is this book is a recent book by Mark Shapiro. We had him as a guest scholar in residence just a few weeks ago, called Renewing the Old, Sanctifying the New. The unique vision of Rav Kook. I'd highly recommend this. And you can see the picture. This is Rav Kook, and this is Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who was the head of the Yishuv, the old Yishuv in Yerushalayim. Remember, already from 1800, the Gra and the Balatanya had sent people to Israel. Most of them were elderly who were going to pass away. And there was a system called the Chalukah, where Shluchim went to Europe, gather money, and it was called Galicia. These were this was in Yerushalayim alone. And this was called the Old Yishuv. And the Maril Diskin, like in 1890, and Rav Chaim Yosef Sonnenfeld at the time of Rav Kook was the head of the Eida Charedis. I wanted to show you a picture. By the way, we're all used to the picture of Rav. This is a beautiful picture of Rav Kook when he was a young man. Okay, this is by Yehuda Mirsky, mystic in a time of revolution. It's also something that I would highly recommend, more of a biography of Rav Kook's life. And
Let's see.
he learned the Volozhin. So tonight, you're going to hear from me alternately and Nati. And so I will speak about something, and then Nati will speak, and then I'll speak about something, and then Nati will close. That's the thing.
You want something to drink?
So Nati is I think going to share more of the Torah aspects of Rav Kook. I'm going to focus on two specific story points that I think are crucial about the life of Rav Kook. And this comes directly from Rav Mirsky's biography. Okay. Rav Kook did not have much to do with the Arabs of Jaffa. Like many halachis, he did not regard Islam as idolatrous, but was more sympathetic to it than to Christianity. When in 1911, Ha'ivri, the newspaper edited by the Nitziv's son, Meir Bar-Ilan, by then a leading activist in the religious Zionist Mizrahi Party, published a sketch in which Arabs were given the blanket designation, the enemy. Rav Kook took him to task. Not only did talk like that give ammunition to Jews' foes and irritate the Turks, he wrote him it ignored the many Arabs of goodwill. Rav Kook urged Berlin to desist from that sort of thing, whose benefit is zero and damage incalculable. Instead, he suggested promote the paths of peace and brotherhood, which we encounter among the genuinely practical men of the Yishuv and among the Arab inhabitants of the land. Of course, I mean the best of them. So we're already seeing Rav Kook in a certain light. Rav Kook is a humanist, and in many ways is a universalist, and we'll see some of that as we go on. In the fall of 1913, Rav Kook had an idea for an initiative that would bring some peace between the new Yishuv and the old. And he hoped enhance his standing with both. We heard a little bit from Shalosh from Nati that there was something called Aliyah Rishonah, the first Aliyah. In 1881, we have something called Bilu, Beit Yaakov L'chuven Elcha. And these were Zionists. No, I can't even call them Zionists. These are lovers of Zion, Chovevei Tzion. Theodor Herzl wrote his book in 1895, and the first Zionist Congress was 1897. So you're talking about almost 16 years before. With the push of Baron Rothschild, so they established Rishon LeZion, Zichron Yaakov, wineries, and they began the process of draining the swamps. Hi, Jake, my brother. Most of this Aliyah were religious Jews. Petach Tikva. In 1905, let's say early 1900s, began the second Aliyah, which was primarily socialists, communists, non-religious Jews trying to escape the clutches of the rabbis, and they were not Orthodox, most of them. This second Aliyah, who of course is in the second Aliyah, David Ben-Gurion, who comes to Israel like in 1906. When we were in Salonika, Ben-Gurion went to law school in Salonika, and he came to visit. And Salonika was a Jewish community where even the stevedores, that means even the people who loaded the boats, were Jews. It wasn't just that they were the doctors and the lawyers; they were the policemen. They were everybody. And David Ben-Gurion said, "This is the way Tel Aviv needs to look. We need to be doing everything." So. And Golda Meir, and we'll see Moshe Dayan's family. We'll see in a minute about that. These primarily came in the second Aliyah, 1900 to 1910, 1920. In the 1930s, the German Jews came. We'll see a little about it tonight as well. That means Ben-Gurion and the labor Zionists, to the very strong opposition of Cherut, of the Jabotinsky, who was still alive, the Cherutniks who were against Mapai. The Ben-Gurion brought German Jewish families with their wealth. At that time, 1933 to 1938, Germany was interested in getting rid of their Jews, but not through extermination yet. They wanted them to emigrate. And there was a concordat made, and many German Jews came with a lot of their wealth. And all of a sudden, Israeli society changes. It becomes wealthier. It becomes more cultured. Symphonies, doctors, the Beit Tico, right? At the end of Yerushalayim, there was a restaurant. So he was an ophthalmologist who came from Germany and set up shop. And this is what goes on throughout Israel. That's the third Aliyah. So we're seeing three waves of Aliyah. Aliyah Rishonah, Aliyah Shniah. Okay. So in 1902, when Rav Kook is appointed the chief rabbi of Jaffa, it's Jaffa and the Yeshuvim that are all in the north. So Rav Kook had an idea of an initiative to create a connection between the old Yishuv in Yerushalayim and his community in the Moshevot. A year earlier, he had asked Ben Zion Yadler, a respected rabbi and preacher in Yerushalayim, to serve as his representative and supervise the observance of agriculture halachot, Shemitah, Meiser, in the agricultural settlements of Samaria and the Galilee region. As the project progressed, Rav Kook began to consider a program of regular rabbinic visits to the new settlements, not only for halachic supervision, but also for preaching, teaching, and religious revival. At first, he thought he would travel by himself, in the company of local rabbis from Haifa, Tveria, and Tzfat. But as he made preparations, he learned that one of the Jerusalem rabbis wanted to come too, none other than the rabbinic judge who had by then emerged as one of his chief critics, Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. This is a picture, that's a picture of some of this Mishlachat. They were in the end a group of 10. Rav Kook, an assistant, Rav Charlap, who was the best student of Rav Kook, Rav Yadler, Rav Sonnenfeld, and his son. By the way, at this time, Rav Kook is 49 years old, and Rav Sonnenfeld is 65 years old.
What year?
This is 1913. So he becomes chief rabbi when he's like 37, and now he's 49. They set out from Jaffa, November 19th, 1913, and were on the road by carriage, horse, and mule for just under a month. The delegation made 26 stops in all, going as far north as Metula. Everywhere they went, they asked the local community for a written statement about its members' religious lives and their willingness or unwillingness to accept rabbinic supervision. The reception was not surprisingly warmest, the reception was warmest in the old cities of Tveria, Haifa, and Sfat, and in the settlements of the first Aliyah, such as Zichron Yaakov and Chadera. There, the rabbis were respectful and at times gratefully received. The locals were inspired to refurbish or even build synagogues and to allocate time and monies for religious education. Things went differently in the settlements of the second Aliyah, where kosher food was not to be had at all, services were non-existent, even or especially on Yom Kippur. Rav Kook regularly told their hosts that he and his colleagues were coming not only to exert their influence, but also to be influenced in turn by them. Remember, Rav Kook's ideology is that no matter what your level of religiosity is, you're working the land, you are achieving spiritual heights just by that. I believe that's what Rav Mirsky means when he says he wanted to be influenced, and he told them that we are also coming to be influenced by you. But the gaps were great. At Merchavia, near Haifa, there were 50 workers there. The rabbis conducted a memorial service for 2 Jewish laborers recently murdered by Eretz, one at Kinneret, the other at Degania. The victim from Degania, Moshe Barsky, was killed while fetching medicine for his friend Shmuel Dayan. In commemoration, Shmuel named his firstborn son Moshe Dayan.
Wow.
The rabbis were well practiced at giving hespedim, eulogies, but the no less novel enterprise of secular Jewish agriculture in the Holy Land, Sonnenfeld, perhaps reflecting his own uncertainty about what to say, cited from the biblical ceremony for the funeral of an anonymous corpse, "Our hands did not shed this blood, and our eyes did not see." That's from Egla Rufa. Egla Rufa. Yadenu lo shafchu et adamas. A confession entirely in keeping with the traditional quietism of the old Yeshu. Rav Kook, characteristically open about his conflict, tried to have it both ways. After expressing discomfiture at eulogizing unrepentant sinners, he said that nonetheless, he wanted to honor these heroic fallen of Israel. That was too much for some in the audience to bear, and one of the workers rose to denounce rabbis in general and Rav Kook in particular, and that evening dissolved in arguments. At Poria, a settlement of 35 workers nestled on a hillside southwest of Tveria, overlooking the Sea of Galilee, something extraordinary happened. As the rabbis and the workers were eating dinner in the communal hall, shots rang out. 3 Arabs, it turned out, had tried to steal some sheep. The workers apprehended them, took written statements, gave them some food and a bed for the night, and sent for the Turkish police. Remember, that's under the Ottoman Empire until 1918, when the British, in conquering the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I, take over as the British mandate. At this time, they're still, the chief rabbinate was established by the Turkish in 1905, 1902, when he was appointed chief rabbinate. It's under the Ottoman Empire. Afterwards, the workers gathered around the fire for singing and dancing. Rav Kook, overcome with emotion, wrapped himself in a watchman's cloak and headdress danced with them, and went for a horseback ride. On his return, he and some of the other rabbis continued dancing. Sonnenfeld sat by the fire and offered not sermons but stories about life in Yerushalayim. At daybreak, Rav Kook addressed the group, again charting his own course between the old Yishuv and the new. He said, the land would be won by mitzvot, he said, by Shabbat and Kashrut, but no less by working the land. After thus validating the enterprise of the new Yeshuvniks, he pleaded with the workers to take upon themselves the religious observances they associated with the old. Donning a watchman's cloak and headdress once more, he again began to dance and sing. So, before I conclude, I just want to, this is, again, there's a sefer called Eile Maseh, and this was written by one of the rabbis. This is an article by Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, the Pninei Halacha, that we learn in Surim Rabbanon, right? Rabbi Kook leads Rabbi's tour of the Moshavot. It just says Rav Yosef Chaim was 16 years older than Rav Kook. Rav Kook, one of his most famous statements was, that which is holy will become renewed, and that which is new will become holy. In Hebrew, it's HaChadash Yitkadesh, VaHaKadosh Yichadesh. In almost every place that the rabbis visited, the veteran residents, so the residents that had come 20, 30 years before, complained about the teachers steering their children from the path of Torah and mitzvot. Those teachers were financed at first by the clerks of Baron Rothschild, and afterwards the Jewish Colonization Association, coordinated by the Teacher Center. All these organizations were of a national secular orientation. The difficulty in making a living did not allow the farmers to hire teachers suitable to their liking. Rav Kook hoped that by means of the Agudat Yisrael movement, which was established a year before in Europe, resources would be found to hire religious teachers in all of the Moshavot. This was one of the reasons for Rav Kook's visit to the Agudat Yisrael convention in Frankfurt at the end of 1913, where Rav Kook got stuck by World War I and remained in Europe until 1990 when he came back. Rav Horowitz, the representative of the committee from Amsterdam, had already managed to obtain a temporary budget for 6 teachers who were sent to the Moshavot. The story is told of one of them, Rabbi Porush, who was sent to Yavniel and was so successful that almost none of the children remained in the secular school. So there's a reason why so much secularity began to occur. It all had to do with education. In Hadera, there were 450 Jews at the time. Most of them were a group of immigrants from Yemen. And the rabbis viewed what was going on. The children learn in mixed groups, boys and girls. They say the religious studies is completely inadequate. We met a 12-year-old boy from the school, and we were astonished. The Chumash is totally foreign to him. He'd never seen one in his life. He learns Yeshayahu and Yechezkel from the book of prophets, but you can guess the perception of a child who has never seen a Chumash. They are taught absolutely nothing about the obligation of prayer. The situation of the youth is a real problem. So he says Zichron Yaakov is the largest moshava. There also the rabbis discovered that the school was mixed, the teachers were secular, and foreign influences caused a drifting apart from religion. And Rav Kook told them that a tikkun must be made in the school. The classes must be separated. The boys and the girls should learn separately. There were some teachers who argued over this. And in the end, the committee accepted the requirement fundamentally, but decided to transfer the arrangement of the matter to the school conference. Then there was the position of the platform. The bima was placed in front like the reform. And the rabbis had them move it into the center, which is the Orthodox way. So it was temporarily moved, but when the rabbis left, the platform was returned to its original place. So in Yavniel, in the middle of Rav Kook's sermon, a modern man began objecting to what was being talked about, taking miser, screaming, in our place, there will not be such a thing. Rav Kook got very angry, reproved the man harshly, until Rabbi Sonnenfeld calmed Rav Kook down by saying, Rabbi, you will yet see this man do tshuva. And Rav Yadler writes that this is exactly what happened. Eventually, that same man personally assisted in the tithing of produce, and he made the comment, if we are ready to sacrifice our lives for the communist red flag when it hasn't yielded anything, all the more so should be ready to sacrifice our lives for the agricultural tithes, which is an ancient custom from the times of Yoshua ben Nun, who conquered the land. There's another story about a visit to Poria, but again, although the rabbis registered some gains, the trip on the whole was less than successful. Try as they might, they could not talk the young revolutionaries into embracing precisely what they had come to Palestine to reject. As for Rav Sonnenfeld, his month on the road likely deepened his grasp of how deep a challenge he and all that he stood for faced from the new Yishuv, and also from his unorthodox colleague from Yafo. So that's my first, any comments, any?
Why the Yishuv from Yemen? I thought they were very traditional from Yemen.
Yeah,
You
but-
said the inhabitants were from Yemen.
Said in one of the, said in Chadera.
And yeah. But they were not good.
450 Jews in the northern section of the area lived a group of immigrants from Yemen.
Oh.
But remember, who was running the religious schools in the Chadera? It was non-religious teachers.
Eating in Australia.
So I want to start a little bit with the quoting from. It's not in the handout, but I'm just going to read a quote from the last paragraph of Orot. Orot is the famous sefer of Rav Kook that Rav Tzvi Yehuda was editing, his son, and he says like that: "וצריכים להודיע לכל העולם כולו." We have to announce to the whole world. לעלובי הגלות והאפלה, to the people that they are in diaspora. כי צינור החיים המלאים, שפע אור ונעימות קדושה של ארץ חמדתנו החל להיפתח. A spiritual pipe started to be open. A spiritual line started to be open of a spiritual line has from the fact that we are connecting to the land. So our connection to the land, our spiritual connection to the land, are starting to be open. It was somehow blocked during the exile, and this spiritual line is started to be open. עת הזמיר הגיע וכל התור נשמע בארצנו, means the גאולה is coming. ארץ נעימה דורשת היא את בניה. The land is demanding the present or the return of her own kids. פושטת היא את זרועותיה אלוהים באהבה. The land itself is spreading there or opening her arms for us to hug us. על כל פשעים היא מכסה, on every sin she covers, באהבתה with a full love. שובו שובו בנים גולים, come back, exile son, בנים נדחים לחק עמכם to be hugged by יומם, שובו וזכרו אל מחוללכם. And then he says, ואם ראשית הגילוי הוא רק קווי אור דקים אנו רואים. Now we see just a little bit of returning. He's writing it probably when he came back, when he started his Rabbonos in Yafo. So there was almost nothing there. I mean, there were a couple of agricultural communities, but there was not a strong yishuv, maybe 30,000 people, maybe less even. So there are only sprinkles of light that we can see. במהרה תיפרץ האורה מלוא רוחב ארצנו עמנואל. The light would come, and then will be a full unification between the nation of Israel and the land, and those are different nevuot, those are prophecy, because nobody could anticipate that. Who could think, when Tel Aviv wasn't built yet, that we will have today what we have. That we will have a Jewish army, that we will have, those magnificent cities, all the Olam HaTorah and the yeshivas and everything. So that shows you that when you learn the teaching of Rav Kook, you learn something which is close to a prophecy. There is, there are many rabbis that wrote many books and many important writings about Jewish philosophy, Hasidus, and so on and so forth, and Perushim, but not many of them are anticipating what we are having now. And he saw it. It's written. He saw it with his eyes. So when we are approaching his Torah, we have to bear in mind that we are talking about the Ra'aya, means the visionary, the one that could see far away and that had, my opinion, has an influence on many of us that we are sitting here today, that active in many areas of Judaism, and the movement of Mesiras Nefesh that we have today in Israel. In light of October 7, I actually saw it. I have my colleagues in Israel that they're rabbis, and you saw that immediately when the attack happened, people come back to the Torah of Rav Kook. They wanted to get a certain comfort and a certain visionary and a certain stamina that you can get only from the writing and the ideas of Rav Kook. There is nobody that could provide a healing Torah and a chizuk Torah and guidelines for how to endure this war, how to survive this war, how to fight this war, how to stay with emunah, with bitochen, except from Rav Kook. He's the only one that you can turn to his Torah and be energized and fueled and understanding what's going on in Israel today. So now a little bit about Rav Kook's life. Rav Kook started his life when the most of the Jewish nation were observants. Most of them were religious. And then at the end of his life and his funeral, most of the Jewish nation were not observant anymore. They were secular. So he witnessed this shift. And another shift that he witnessed, the shift from Golus to Geula. Rav Kook himself grew up in Lita. His father was connected to Volozhin Yeshiva. He was maybe a shadar of, Shlucha Derabanan of Volozhin Yeshiva. So he was connected to the teaching of the Gra. The Gra says, send his students to Israel. And Rav Kook saw that movement that started with the Vilna Gaon as the beginning of Geula. So Rav Kook already knew that redemption is coming. The question that Rav Kook has to endure, how can the redemption, and specifically after the second Aliyah, when he arrives in Yafo, and the second Aliyah, all those communists and socialists are coming from Europe, how can it be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu leads the Geula with people that they are not observants? And they are the pioneers of the Geula. How can it be? So if you look at page number 2, you see how the Torah says, God will return you to the land. And then what is the next step? So the redemption has to be with the tshuva movement. If the redemption has to be with the tshuva movement, how can it be that the redemption is coming from a secular movement? And the leaders of the movement are completely secular. How can it be? So that's the conflict that Rav Kook has to reconcile somehow.
I think from the psukim, actually, you can learn
Yeah.
that first you got to come, and then there's a tshuva movement, meaning so the people who came would be non-religious. You could say, because Umal, why didn't it say first Umal Hashem and then Vaviacha? No, first come. And then you could say, you could learn that way, maybe.
Yeah. So everything in halacha, if you have a new innovation, a new phenomena that emerges, you have to find boxes of halacha to match the new phenomena that you're dealing with. For example, you're dealing with electricity on Shabbos. Okay, so that's a new thing. It wasn't before. That's an invention. So the poskim that they have to decide what is the position of halacha regarding chashmal, electricity on Shabbos. They would say to you, you know what? They find a box, they find a category of halacha which is can match electricity. What is the first one? Mavir. Lighting, you're not allowed to light on Shabbos, light on fire on Shabbos. Electricity is fire. Boine, building, makebepatish, uvdin the whole. They're trying to find old categories to match the new phenomena. Now, when there is a secular Jew, it's a new phenomenon. It wasn't there before. How you relate to him? Who is he? So the first tshuva that deals with that is the Binyan Sion, the first one, famous tshuva, here in the first page, marked in the last line of the page. I don't know what to say. I cannot find any category to match them, who they are. שבעוונותינו הרבים פשטה בארץ לרוב עד שברובם חילול שבת.
Binyan Sion is Rav Yaakov Ettlinger, who lived in Germany in 1850, was one of the Rebbeim of Shimshon Refoldish.
נעשה כהתר.
That's a what?
One of the teachers of Shimshon Refoldish.
אם לא יש להם דין או מרמוטה אשר הקורב למזיד, are there מחללי Shabbos בפרהסיה which they are considered not a goy, like a mumo, or they are shoige korov lemezid? And on top of it, ויש בהם שמתפללים תפילת שבת ומקדשים, some of them are doing kiddush, and then they're driving. And then, ואחר כך מחללים שבת במלאכות דאורייתא ודרבנן. So what they are, who they are. So he goes back and forth. He doesn't know exactly what box to put those secular Jews. So here is a picture of a secular secular Jew that leads the whole Zionist movement. Herzl. So what box Rav Kook has to put them? How he can deal with them? Who is he? Should we collaborate with them? Should we be a part of them? So let's go to page number 2. The answers for those questions are in which is called Igeret Taf Kuf Nun Hey. It's a letter from Rav Kook that was sent. It's a part of a debate or a certain argument that the rabbi from Tzfat, that his name was Yaakov David, forgot his name, Ridvaz Zilba something, and he was the Rav of Tzfat, and he was basically against it started with the halachically argument about Heter Mechira. Are you allowed to sell the field to a non-Jew in order to preserve your wealth, in order not to lose all it was a question, an agricultural question. There was farms, Jewish settlers that they had farms, and then comes Shemitah and they have to abandon their field. What are they going to do? They need to? They don't need to? Are they? If they're going to leave their field abandonedly, the Arabs can come and they don't have parnasa. They're going to die. They're going to be hungry. So what are they going to do? So Rav Kook invented Heter Mechira, and there is a debate about this Heter Mechira. Heter Mechira is basically they sell their farm to a non-Jew, and therefore they can still be as a worker of the farm for the non-Jew and still be paid and make a living and still being on their land. So it's a fictional sale like Mechiras Chometz. But this debate turns to be a much principled debate about collaboration with the Zionist movement. And that comes in the first question. ומה שכתב, page number 3, מה שכתב מר לתמוע עליי, he refers to the Ridvaz, to the Rav of Tzfat, במה שאני מקרב את הכל. I am מקרב everybody, I'm connecting to everybody. גם את פושעי ישראל, also the people that they are sinners, that they are all the members of the Aliyah, the second Aliyah, that they are not observants. כדי להחזירם בתשובה. כתבתי לו ברמז כוונתי, שכל מי שהוא מוכשר לעסוק בפנימיות רזי תורה הוא מתמלא יותר מאור החסד. He said on himself, I'm coming from a mystical point, from a Kabbalistical view, which is very interesting, is a match between the Kabbalistical Torahs and teachings of the Vilna Gaon and the Hasidic movement. Rav Kook from his father was related to Volozhin, and from his mother came from a Hasidic, had a Hasidic background. On a footnote, there is a very interesting thing. If you read the Tanya is based on an idea, the Alter Rebbe's idea, that every human being has a competing neshamas has two competing neshamas. Has a neshama which is called neshama elokit, the soul from God, and the animalistical soul, which they are competing with each other. So that's the idea of the Tanya. Rav Kook, when he writes about those issues, he takes the idea of the Baal Tanya, and somehow he changes the word. Instead of competing neshamas, which can lead you to, question who I am. If you're going to read the book of the Tanya, and don't quote me on that, you're going to have a little bit of a conflict, because the Tanya tells you have two personalities. So who you are when you're doing the sin, are you Mr. X or Mr. Y? If you read this, it's a very hard thing to accept. So Rav Kook changes, instead of shtei neshamot, he says shtei netiyot, which means you are the same human being.
Tendencies.
And you have two tendencies, to the spiritual side or to the animalistical side. So you see how he takes how he has a Hasidic influence, and somehow he refines it, and even upgrade the Torah of the Baal Tanya. The same thing he does here. He takes an idea which is already based in the teaching of the Tanya as well, and in the teaching of the Sfas Emes. If you read Sfas Emes, you see that every Jew has nekudah ha'elokit, a godly spiritual spark in him. Okay? So then he develops it and takes the idea that every Jew has a spark of God, as a part of him. He translated to an ideology how to deal with the Zionist movement, and he takes it to make a base to his theology decision to be a part of the Zionist movement and to view the Zionist movement as a positive movement. So here he does it in this teaching. He says, "Yeda hadrad geono, ששני דברים עיקריים ישנם שהם יחד בונים קדושת ישראל וההתקשרות האלוקית עמהם." There are two levels or two components in the holiness of every Jew, and with his relationship to God. Ha'echad, one component, the first component, who sgula, is this spark, godly spark that it's in each Jew. כלומר, טבע הקדושה שבנשמת ישראל, מירושת האבות. We're getting it as an inheritance from our father. אלוקי אברהם, אלוקי יצחק ואלוקי יעקב. That's what we said. So we have a zchut avot. We have a certain, the Mor Nevuchim has
The Pinteliyid.
the Pinteliyid, that's the Lubavitcher Rebbe's idea. Later on, the Mor Nevuchim says that Avram Avinu was a rock, and the rock was divided to small pieces of stone, and each one of us is carrying a stone based on Avram Avinu. So we are a part of Avram Avinu. So that spark, that kedusha, that holiness is inherited, is almost like a gift that every Jew has it, and doesn't matter what he does, and he doesn't choose to have it. It's not your decision. You said to yourself, "Oh, I wanted to have this spark, or I don't want to have this spark." It not depends on your decision. It's inherently in yourself. והסגולה הוא כוח קדוש פנימי, מונח בטבע הנפש ברצון השם. And the סגולה, this פינטלאיד, this kedusha of Jewishness inside you, Jewish identity, it's strong and it's the holiest thing that you ever can have. And what is the second component? The second component of Jewish identity is who inyan abchira, what your deeds are, what you're choosing to do, how you choose to execute your Jewish identity. Are you putting tefillin in the day? Are you going to shul? Are you keeping kosher? The mitzvahs are basically how you choose to execute and to act on your Jewish identity, on your sgula, on your nekuda. Okay? זה תלוי במעשה הטוב ותלמוד תורה. החלק של הסגולה, says רב קוק, הוא הרבה באין ארוך כלל, יותר גדול וקדוש מהחלק התלוי בך. The component of the sgula, the component of the identity, the kedusha of a Jew that comes from Avraham Avinu and is a gift from God, it's much more holy than what you choose or what you're not choose to do. Because the what you're choosing to do, it's a human deed. I mean, it's what you're doing. What you're doing is sometimes polluted with the interest and self-interest and so on and so forth. But what God gives you, it's a godly thing. It doesn't depend on anything. So it's much holier than what you're doing. Okay?
He's not gonna ask someone who's proposing to someone, to a girl, is the girl a religious Jew? Or is she gonna keep kosher, all that stuff? He's never going to ask that from a person?
No, he said it's a component. It's a second component. It's a second component. It's important. But the uniqueness, the Jewish kedusha in you, it's much holier. Okay, it's holier. It's holy because it comes from God. Because it comes from God. Okay. And then he says like that, and that's the hammer. Here is the big idea. והשם יתברך, הנוהג חסדו בכל גדול, מסדר את כל סדרי הנשמות הצריכות להופיע בעולם. לפעמים כוח הבחירה מתגבר וכוח הסגולה עומד במצב העלם ואינו ניכר. He says like that. Those two components of Jewish identity, which means the first layer is the godly present inside your neshama. Second is what you're choosing to do. Yeah, those two components. Sometimes the A part is much bigger than the B part. And sometimes the B part is much bigger than the A part. For example, if you are in exile, what makes you a Jew?
Your mitzvahs in the Torah.
Yeah, so then the B part is becoming much more important.
Right.
Yeah, so here, see like that. ולפעמים כוח הסגולה מתגבר וכוח הבחירה עומד במצב הנעלם. And here with a footnote, in a different places he says that in the time of Geula, in the time of redemption, the koach hasgula is much more stronger. The A component, the kedusha component of a Jew, is much more important than what you choose to do. Why? Why he says that in a different place? He says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to do ma'apecha, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to change stuff in the world, he makes people, he takes away, he diminishes the free, the bechira, the koach ha-bechira, the free choosing of a human being. He diminishes that because he wants to make a big change. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for example, in the HaKadosh Baruch Hu want us to go to Israel, so he makes a huge thing in the world. He makes a huge ma'apecha in the world. A lot of nations are coming and going. There are two big wars, two world wars at the same time that the movement to Israel is coming, the Zionist movement are coming. They're a huge thing in the world. And you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taking the koach ha-bchira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is moving things in the world. So therefore, he takes Herzl to the couch of the psychiatric, or this, he's doing analysis on Herzl. And he says, this guy is a secular guy, no kippah, yeah? But he wants the benefit of the Jewish people. He cares about the Jewish people. Not only cares about the Jewish people, he sees the Jewish people as a nation, and he's leading a movement to bring them to Israel. So, says Rav Kook, Herzl really wants to be religious. He wants to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Somehow, because God moved things around, he diminishes his way of choosing, his decision making, and he makes them force them to move in a certain secular way because it has a benefit for the redemption. Has a benefit. Why it has a redemption for the benefit? A lot of explanation he has. A chutzpah of the secular movement. It's much more than the yeshiva bocher that sits in the stand there. So there are many components in the secular movement which they are beneficial and they are positive because he sees God. Because he sees God in everything. He sees God in everything. He is the mystical, he is Rav Kook, the mystical rabbi, and he knows how to understand God through history and through the movement that God does in history. And therefore, he analyzes that Herzl is the best Jew that ever can be. Because he's connected to his Jewish neshama, even sometimes more and then the yeshiva bocher that sits and learns. It's very hard to understand, but that's what he says. That's the idea that comes out from the teaching of Rav Kook. I'm going to read a little bit more on that, and then we'll give you.
He's Melamed Schus on the,
It's not only, it's
Regular
much
Jews
more than Melamed Schus.
that we're not doing the mitzvahs in Torah.
No, it's not that
It's their
they are.
skula that's doing it.
They really want what they want is to be religious. They want to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They want to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And because they want to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's why they're doing it. There is no other reason. There is no any alternative motive of that.
Right.
And he says a very interesting idea. He says that the prayer of Lamalshinim Al Tei Sikvo, the prayer that we say in Shemona Esrei every day, Birkat Aminim, who was the one that instituted that?
Rabbi Gamliel and Yavna.
Shmuel HaKatan. Shmuel HaKatan was instituted that. Shmuel HaKatan. That's what's written in the Gemara. And Shmuel HaKatan used to say, Bin follow vecha al tismach. He was the one that said, when your enemy is falling, you shouldn't be happy. So says Rav Kook that he was the only one that could write this prayer, that could compose this prayer, because he was a Jew with such a love to anybody, with such a love to the world, that he said, "Bin follow vecha al tismach." To quote something like that and to say that regularly, that when your enemy is falling, you shouldn't be happy. You need to be love. You need to be in love with people. You need to love everybody. So only Shmuel HaKatan could institute that prayer. So basically, but Rav Kook doesn't say that everybody has this Jewish pintele. Not everybody has this Jewish gula. There are people that are crossing the line. He says that in page number 3.
It's called a Porshim and Makari.
Page number 3 in the second
Backside of it.
backside of it. ועל אותם שכבר עבדו גם את הסגולה הפנימית שלהם לגמרי, there are some people that they lost their Jewish identity completely. They lost the first component. אמר דוד המלך השלום, הלא משנאך השם אסלה. והמינים והקוברים על פורו ועבדו גם את הסגולה הפנימית, ומידת זו נוהג ברוב הדורות, אבל דור של עקבת המשיחה הם יוצאים מכלל זה, שמדברי תיקון הזוהר טוב מלגב ולביש מלבר, והם חמורו של משיח שנאמר אני רוכב על חמור. So, וכן הם אותם הנשמות, I'm continuing the last line of the page, 4, שהסגולה הישראלית לבד המתגלה בעקבות המשיחה, ולהם יש תרופה. It's not that this part.
No, it's not one of the
Where he says about the people that they lost.
He says, only ki motam shani margish shekoch skuli gadol munach b'pninehem. He's saying not everybody of the non-religious have that pintali, but he can recognize who has it. On page 3, the first underline.
Yeah, so he writes about it in a couple of places that there are certain people that they cross the line because they are basically going against the nation. When you're going against the nation, again, if you have another idea how is the nation should be, yeah, it's not that everybody that has a different idea, everybody from the left or everybody here and everybody there, you lost your sgula. No, if you are working for the benefit and if your ideas and your attention is for the positive build-up and strength of Am Yisrael, so you're part of the sgula. But if you're going against Am Yisrael, you lose that. So he has also a limitation. He doesn't say everybody, but in generally speaking, he sees that, and we'll conclude with that. There was a story that Hillel Zeitlin was a famous, he became a member of Aguda later on, he was killed in the Holocaust. He was a great writer that lived in Poland, and he went to Reb Chaim Sonnenfeld, and he says to Reb Chaim Sonnenfeld, you know what? I visited all those kibbutzim. What a mesirus nefesh they have. They working the land and they fighting
They're dying of malaria.
They're dying of malaria. They're such a mesirus nefesh. But then Rav Sonnenfeld said to him, you know what? But they don't put feeling. What I can do? I mean, how can I be connected to them? And then he comes to Rav Kook and tells him the whole story. Again the pitch, and he says to him, Rav Sonnenfeld told me that I cannot be connected to them because they are not religious. So Rav Kook told them, yes, Rav Chaim Sonnenfeld is right in the time of Golus. In the time of Golus, you have the Shulchan Aruch, and if there is somebody, a Yid, that, how we say, this guy from Amsterdam, the Koifer, what's his name? Spinoza. He's crossing the line, you put him in cherem, and that's it. If somebody is not an observant or go against the community, you don't keep them. You don't have to be in touch. You have to disown them, basically. But then he says, in time of Geula, there is a different psika, there is a different halacha. You go according to the Zoya. You go according to the Kabbalah. You go according to the mystical sources of what we have. Of the Torah, the pnimius of the Torah, and that's basically the idea of Rav Kook. Yeah.
So he can only believe that if you go through a Navi, especially a Navi, not according to a Navi, Yeshua and so on. If you read it, you see that the people that worship the idols, that's it. You were cut off. That means you have no belief in God, worshiping the idol. You could eat trade, you could eat everything else. That's not as important as eating as what you're saying is that you cross the line, that's it, you're finished. This is the same thing, what he's saying, the same thing. He says, it's not important how religious you are now. Well, you keep Shabbos, you try as much as possible, you can't do it, okay. But you're still considered a Jew. You still have that spark of being a Jew. That's still good.
He said further, Jerry, he said that those Jews who have the pintali that are not actively performing mitzvahs are on a high level.
No.
He didn't say the highest level,
no,
but he gave them. He said that at the time of
their nefesh,
Geula, at the time of Geula, the skula aspect is what Hashem is caring about.
Yeah,
and that's why the Hasidic don't like him.
Yeah,
He's too close to people that are not religious, not from, and they think that this being not from
the reason why they didn't like him. It's basically if you read the Ramban and you read that. The Ramban says that the only execution of the mitzvahs are in the land of Israel. It means we are here in Chutz La'aretz, we are in a training camp to be trained to do the mitzvahs in Israel because the real mitzvahs are to do in Israel and not in the Golus, not in exile.
They broke with Rav Kook based on secular education.
So, but I'm saying you bring up a movement, you bring up a whole movement, yeah. That they're coming to what is the idea of going to Israel? The Yishuv HaYoshan. The idea of I'm getting old. Yeah, I'm coming to die. I want to be spiritual. I want to be removed from all I want to do mitzvahs in the real place. I want to observe Torah and mitzvahs in the real place, which is the spiritual work. That's the ideal Jew. So they're moving to Israel and they're setting up their neighborhoods in Yerushalayim and Tzfat, and they're doing mitzvahs. And then the seculars are coming and they're doing Averos where you should do Averos, go to Paris. Go to New York. Go to St. Petersburg. What, you coming here to do averos in the Palterin Shel Melech, in the palace of the king? How you can do it? So that they couldn't bear it. And you, Rav Kook, are basically collaborating with this movement. But according to Rav Kook, it's Geula. It's Geula. And it's proved.
You can see in 1913, he was traveling with Rav Sonnenfeld, but in 1920, they laid the cornerstone for the Hebrew University. And who came? Albert Einstein and 5 other major figures from around the world. And Rav Kook came as well, because he understood that there's going to need to be engineering and science and physics, and that the Kimitzion Tetzei Torah, Udvar Hashem Yushalayim. What does that mean? Torah Yushalayim. What's Dvar Hashem and what's Torah? I mean, science is also Torah, and it's also got to come from Yerushalayim. That means both the Torah and science. Rav Kook saw value in that, and they broke with him because of the Mariel Diskin already in 1890. They made a ban on secular education in Jerusalem, which is still extant today. In no Haredi yeshiva in Jerusalem can you teach secular education. So Rav Kook in 1920, who already realized that, that's what sort of sealed the breakage with the Haredi world in Rav Kook, because he gave value to secular education. And as we see, the religious Zionists do go to university. When you go to a hospital in Lanyado, what do you see there? You see the administrators are Hasidim of the Sanzer. The doctors have kippot through God because they're religious Zionists, went to medical school. The patients are Chilonim. That's our society there.
Nurses are Arabic.
And some of the nurses, but some of them aren't based. There's Beis Yaakov and Bnei Akiva girls in that nursing school. So there's multiple reasons why they broke with Rav.
So let's just a little bit of closing up the class here. I really hope that this is not the last meeting of learning of Rav Kook's Torah, and that will inspire us to at least once a month or once every 6 weeks. I know we'll set it up to study the teaching of Rav Kook.
There's a lot more interesting material that we have to share with Rav Kook. So
People don't
yes,
know, but he was a big machmer. Rav Kook,
Mishpat Kohen.
Yeah.
he had a lot of issue with the Mizrahi. He was
Yeah.
attacking the Mizrahi. He
Right.
even didn't want, he was against women having the right to vote.
I know.
Right,
Yeah.
right. They had a major problem with him at that time.
Yeah. They went
But we will get to it. No, let's commit. Let's continue to have
Very smart man.
Torah's Rav Kook. Yeshakoach to Nati really for stimulating this. It's very good. Walter is the power behind Nati.
His
Yes.
son seems to be the opposite
So
of
when
him.
you read.
No,
Tzvi Yehuda, how
You
so?
understand?
I don't know, he seems so fanatical.
No, it's not funny. We can talk about it soon.
You know,
Well, I don't
That
know,
is
like David
true.
said, maybe this guy was Mahmoud too, so.
he was
But you
very,
see Rav Kook's approach to the Arabs, how he felt that, we have to treat them well and we have to get along with them, etc.
you know, the Chazon Ish for Rav
Keep your
Kook,
enemies closer.
not only, he was, Chazon Ish was the only rabbi that is called him Maran, was a Rav Kook. This is the Chazon Ish that is, and when he spoke, he will stand the whole time, a Chazon Ish.
And Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rav Elyashiv, the Masari Kiddushin of both of them was Rav Kook.
Yeah.
So it's a very important, these things are very important. You won't hear this
Yeah.
in other places.
I mean,
But no, that's the truth.
I mean, his teaching today are basically the main power and the main fuel for the Mesiras Nefesh that we see in the warrior. That's nobody has a doubt about that.
That's not even a question.
Yeah.
Okay, Shkoya.
Okay, oh yeah, beautiful.
Very good.
Very nice.
Beautiful.
Hey,